What can I say? Haolonggood just doesn't stop. As someone whose favorite clade is the sauropods, I keep telling myself every time we get one that this 1 to 35 large sauropod could be the last, just to keep myself psychologically prepared. But no, fresh off our recent gift of the Diplodocus, we're back to again with macronarians now, and a Sauroposeidon to be exact, another sauropod, with perhaps the coolest name of all, Sauroposeidon. The name Sauroposeidon is probably the most badass sauropod name I know of. The name means earth shaker lizard, with sauro of course coming from the Greek sauros, while Poseidon comes from Poseidon, commonly known as the Greek god of the sea, who was also actually the god of earthquakes. As you might expect, the box is of significant size. The total weight of the package is 3.1 kilograms or 6.8 pounds. You see again that beautiful blue background of the photo we got with the Diplodocus, taken during their recent photo shoot. Very nice indeed. On one side you have the striped variant, and on the other you have the blue. The side here has a catalogue of the many dinosaurs that Haolonggood has offered. The most attention-getting feature of this model is the standing pose. It immediately commands attention, literally rising head and shoulders above the others. Unfortunately, it also commands shelf clearance, in terms of height, from this dermal spine to the supporting surface. It's 51 centimeters or 20.1 inches or 1.7 feet. So if, like me, your sauropods stand on the top of the shelf, you'll need at least that much clearance. And thank the maker, mine just clears it. The horizontal distance is 26 centimeters or 10.3 inches or 0.85 feet. Estimating scale is interesting. To the best of my ability, I estimate this model to be 79 centimeters or 31.1 inches or 2.6 feet through the centre. It was trickier than expected because of the standing pose and also the lateral flexion here. The Sauropod Facts and Figures book, and yes I know there are errors in there, suggests 29 meters through centre, and in Gunnar Bivens's widely used skeletal, it's 30.6 meters. So assuming 29 to 30 meters or 95 to 98 feet, this model just based on length alone is about 1 to 36. However, as I've explained before, for a sauropod where most of the mass is in the trunk and the neck and tail are long and relatively light, scaling by length alone isn't the most accurate. It really doesn't capture the overall volume of the animal. In case you're interested, the neck has been estimated by Weddell to be between 11.25 to 12 meters, or 36.9 to 39.4 feet. And measuring just the neck itself, I estimate 36 centimeters or 14.2 inches or 1.2 feet, which for a scale of 1 to 35 represents a 12.6 meter or 41.3 foot neck. So I'll say that for 1 to 35, it represents a 27.7 meter or 90.9 foot animal. And here's the Wonder Artistic Models 1 to 35 humanoid to give you a sense of scale. Sauroposeidon is famously considered by many to be, theoretically, the tallest sauropod of them all, up to 20 meters in this reconstruction. Again, because this model is standing up, we don't have the satisfaction of seeing if this is indeed the case. This model weighs 1.7 kilograms, 3.7 pounds, or 60 ounces. Now we've got the numbers out of the way, This comes in 3 color variants. We have the grey. I found the grey too plain for my liking, but it's doubtless a very realistic color, and for those who want something extremely believable, this will be it. The brown, which is listed as the stripe. And then the blue. The blue has a beautifully striking pattern, reminding me of the blue Brachiosaurus or even the blue Alamosaurus prototype, and not like the unfortunate blue Giganotosaurus and similar blue Diplodocus, because there are no awful squiggles and splashes. The stripe has a nice balance of plain and believable with the subtlest of accents to make it more interesting, so it's the one we're looking at today. The pose is of course the main draw of what might otherwise look like another Macronarian or generic Titanosaur, and you'll see it rearing up very dramatically. Not only that, there's a 3-dimensionality to the pose of the neck, curved not just in the sagittal plane, but sideways as well. It just looks good from any viewing angle, even from the back. The color is predominantly a medium dark brown, with even darker brown stripes down the animal, from neck to tail. These are very smoothly blended and very pleasing to the eye. I like subtle detail like that, which isn't gaudy and therefore suggests a more real animal. It's always tricky to review anything tall, so let's see what happens. Now first in the head, and the detail speaks for itself. Around the maxillary area are the finer scales. The bulbous nasal tissue is smooth and shiny, like stretched skin we can believe is filled with air. The rhamphatica is smooth, and the exposed teeth are carefully painted, and the mouth quite nicely detailed, and the inside looks realistically wet. You can even see texturing on the tongue. The commissural tissue of the mouth is also nicely painted. There's a slight slant-eyed appearance to the eyes, which gives it a rather fierce appearance. Around the eyes are a ring of large and thicker scales. The pupils are carefully painted, but to me it's a little disturbing, looking really angry, suggesting it might be rearing up against a would-be predator, or perhaps he's just angry there's no more food. And then these midline dermal spines are quite long, and irregularly sized, oriented, and spaced, which is a nice organic detail, none of that excessive flesh we saw in the Diplodocus. But they're not all individually separate, with some of these fused, whether intentionally or not, here, as well as here. Now let's start going down the neck now. The texture, as you'd expect, is very good, with scales and folds. And as we move down, you'll see something I feel characterizes the texture in this model. An overabundance of variability, with differentiated scales even in small areas. For example, the ventral neck has a very slim elongated rectangular scale. While dorsally, you see the more usual scales we've seen. The almond-emphasized context. And going down, just look at that beautiful juxtaposition of the 2 different types of scale. The dorsal have more of the kind of morphology you'd expect. Very finely beaded appearance. And toward the base, you see plenty of loose skin and a really gnarly appearance, but impregnated with scale detail. On the ventral side, you see more clearly that rectangular scale morphology. And going into the pectoral area, you of course see a different type altogether. What I really like here, and you'll see this elsewhere, is the way these very powerful muscles bulge, realistically supporting this movement. The neck is very thick, and together with all those textures, looks good and feels good to the touch, as some people have apparently discovered online. And down the torso. And here you see another representation of scale diversity, with the much larger scales on the shoulder, the finer ones in the triceps, and slightly different in the torso. And here's an almond to illustrate the size differences. Now moving to the torso proper, unfortunately, just like in the previous Diplodocus, you'll see some cracks again. Also, there's a possible embellishment, which as far as I know, is new. Now here you see what looks at first glance like larger osteoderms. But they're bordered by a slight depression. I don't recall any skin impressions looking like this, so if anyone can enlighten me in the comments, you're always welcome. Down the sides, again these look like cracks to me. And the back now. Now here you see plenty of loose skin folds. You get the impression of really thick skin. The shoulder, often a favorite region of mine for detail, well, here I have mixed feelings. You see some very nicely large scales, which I like, especially when mobility is limited. These are irregularly shaped, but fitting together very nicely. However, some areas aren't as nicely defined as I'd like to see. And in many of them, you see what looks like a dimpling or depression, almost like an ulceration. Now, someone more knowledgeable about manufacturing processes can advise me if this is intentional or some fault. We'll go down the forelimb so you can see the forearm, and the hand. So Sauroposeidon is upped the level of detail even above other splendid models before. Always love seeing sauropod hands, especially those with that famous thumb claw. And this angle again tells the story of morphological diversity. You have these larger shoulder scales here, and transitioning into the flexor aspect, you see the finer scales. While here in the triceps, they're of a different morphology again. And going down the back now, you see that very sharp detail that Haolonggood usually gives most of its models. You can also see that Haolonggood has gone generous with the loose skin and folds here. Really a pleasure to look at all this detail. But unlike some of their earliest work, nothing feels contrived. And now the hind limbs. And these thick and powerful pillars are also dressed with scales and loose skin. As for the tail, I actually like that the midline dermal spines disappeared a bit earlier and made their appearance again, instead of being in a continuous row, just for a bit of differentiation from the other models. You see again all these folds, creases and scales you've seen before, going appropriately finer. Unhappily, Haolonggood has opted not to go with that overused embellishment of a color-accented tail tip. The dorsal tail, and you see a crack here as well, quite unfortunate. You can see how nicely again those stripes are faded into the tail. A quick look at the underside. Again, you see those thin elongate scales here. And the always popular cloaca. A quick look at the base now. It's rather complex, with a mix of terrain. We have a surface of gravelly soil, with a rough, sandy feel. And then here you have something more rocky. Very nicely dry brushed. There's some kind of fern, which is often the case, looks pretty plasticky, and it's the base's only weakness. The nicest part is this area where a bed of moss sits. It looks and feels real, certainly some of it has fallen on the table now. But even better, here's where this tree attaches. You can see it's keyed to the depression, and it's magnetic, so it's a bit more secure. The effect is you have the moss on the ground continuing up the tree. And that fluffy, mossy texture is done very nicely. Up to this branch here. Now look at that texture. Of course, be very careful not to rub it off. And of course, as expected, we see weathered textures on the wood. Unfortunately, the tree is completely bald. I know why they did that, of course. But even just one leaf that we could attach would have been nice. I like how it just seems to go on forever, just like a very long sauropod. It also comes with two tiny pterosaurs, what look like Nyctosaurus to me, though I believe they were from different time periods. And even at this size, Haolonggood has bothered to imbue it with some color. You'll also see some texturing, creating a leathery look to both wing and crest. I have small hands even for Asian standards, and I can barely hold on to it. And here's my almond to give you context. There's another one, also similarly painted and textured. Let's see how the light catches on those details. Very nice indeed. Just really nice little figures and very cute as well. So what you see is a very flimsy peg that's supposed to insert into a corresponding hole. I can only get this one to sit in. The other one up top, I can't seem to do it. And I know some fellow collectors who've used a Dremel drill to drill a deeper hole for it. I'll do that later. I have to admit that when I saw pictures of this, I didn't think too much of it, especially as it looked like just a naked trunk and branches. But I have to say that right now, right next to the Sauroposeidon, it really elevates the experience. Maybe it's the power of a diorama to evoke the living past, and maybe it's just that we so seldom get prehistoric plants, and even so, ones that remind us of the incredible scale of things in the past. Now the whole thing stands at 58 centimeters, or 22.8 inches, even taller than the Sauroposeidon itself. Now I seldom talk about the collaterals, but I really wanted to show you what this one comes with. You have a nice picture of the blue variant. Then here's the trio of Diplodocuses. Just a tip for photography. If you want to do this, make sure to get rid of the water drops, since they'll ruin the illusion of size. A reminder of the gift of sauropods that Haolonggood has given us. With one glaringly missing member, I believe. And this one with all the Haolonggood dinosaurs. I need 4 or 5 tables to recreate this scene. And it's all on very good quality paper, almost stock. So much for the model itself. See you in the next part.